Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you. First, why does this sheriff shoot the judge who was his best friend fascinate me so much? The cop who killed Botham Jean several years ago, well, she's eligible for parole, and some people are not happy about it at all. Eric Adams is going to be superseded. A TikTok influencer has been arrested as a possible suspect in a murder. And a doctor is pleading guilty for his involvement in the death of Matthew Perry. A Missouri teen shoots his father and then calls the cops. And our dumb criminal of the day proves that the apple does not fall too far from the tree. Let's talk about it.
Hi, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment down below, and hit that little bell for notifications so that you get notice of when we go live or put up new content. And yes, check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Before we get to today's show, which is going to be great, let's talk about CrimeTalkSearch.com. Go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, ladies and gentlemen. Sign up for that background subscription service, all right? Let me give you some more reasons why you should do it. First, when you sign up, you can do as many background searches on anyone here in the United States that you desire. Anyone, ladies and gentlemen. You know there's someone out there you want to do some research on. You know it is. And if you want to become the detective you know you are, you need to use the tools that detectives use. That's right. CrimeTalkSearch.com takes all of these public databases around the country and searches them literally while you wait, and then you get a report emailed to you on the individual that you have done the search on. And guess what? It's going to have information on whether they're married, they're divorced, what property they own. You're going to find out if they have a criminal history. Are they divorced? Are they on a public registry, ladies and gentlemen? You know you're dying to go check it out on somebody. Go sign up. And remember, you can cancel at any time. So whether it's one search or 500 searches, ladies and gentlemen, it is your choice. All right, let's go to the docket today for October 2nd, 2024, and let's open the record. All right, I said in opening, why does this story about the Kentucky sheriff who's friends with the judge fascinate me so much? Is it the fact that they were friends, they had just gone to lunch, and then we know that the sheriff uses the judge's phone and finds his daughter's number in there, and next thing you know, the judge is dead? This is intriguing to me. I cannot wait for more information. Let's talk about what we know so far. So the Kentucky sheriff told officers, "Treat me fair," as he was arrested for fatally shooting a judge after finding his daughter's number in his phone. We heard this at the preliminary hearing on Tuesday. So the Lechner County Sheriff, Shawn Mickey Stines, is accused of shooting the district court judge, a guy by the name of Kevin Mullins, last month in a episode that has turned the town upside down. And the town is Whitesburg, and apparently it is dividing the town. Half the people think that there was something weird going on with the judge, and apparently half the other people are supporting the judge and now his widower and his widow wife. So this is so interesting. This is going to be a Netflix series. I can see it. Anyway, so the detective, when he was on the witness stand, described Stines as being calm. Remember, Stines is the sheriff following the shooting, and said that the sheriff was arrested without incident and spoke to the officers at the scene. And there was footage shown. We've showed you this, and it shows Stines gunning down the judge inside the judge's chambers as he sat behind his desk. Mullins attempted to scramble behind the desk and a chair in the corner of the room while Stines continued firing shots. In perhaps the video's most significant moment, the sheriff then goes to leave, but stops as his hand is placed on the door handle, shoves aside the desk chair, and fires a couple more shots into the judge before eventually walking out into the next room there at the courthouse. Now, the court heard testimony that Stines had found his daughter's number in Mullins' phone. That's the judge. Now, I know it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. But apparently the judge shouldn't have, and maybe the Sheriff Stines, was a little surprised why the judge would have his daughter's number in there. Anyway, the sheriff then tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone. That's where really the speculation begins, and maybe that's some speculation for the shooting. We really don't know yet, but it's a fact. It's a fact that we know. Then we have reports last month, just hours before the shooting, the sheriff and the judge were longtime friends, shared an outside table at a popular street-side grill and bar on Main Street for lunch, only a few hundred yards from the courthouse where the judge was killed. They apparently were lunchtime regulars together at the sports bar, and on the fateful day, they ordered their usual, both having the $13.99 wings and salad special. According to people there, everything seemed fine to them. There was no clue that anything was wrong at all, and one of the staff attending them said everything was just quite normal. You wouldn't have guessed that they had the slightest problem. Well, the court also heard testimony that the surveillance video also showed Stines looking at Mullen's phone several times and then using his phone and the judge's phone to try and call his daughter before the shooting. Now, upon discovering his daughter's number in the phone, he jumped to his feet within seconds. That's when he opened fire. Now, the Kentucky State Police detective responsible for the investigation, a guy by the name of Clayton Stampert, testified that the pair had appeared to argue during lunch. I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, "Do we need to meet private in my chambers?" That's all I was told, according to Detective Stamper, who's testified to that at the preliminary hearing. No further background was shared by the detective. Well, the video did give us some new details as the court seems to determine whether there was enough evidence for Stines to face a grand jury. And he has. And Sheriff Stines has entered a plea of not guilty on the charge of murder. And like I said, the judge did find probable cause. Not surprising indeed. Now, police allege Stines shot the judge at the county courthouse in Whitesburg, Kentucky, on September 19th of this year. Why is that significant, ladies and gentlemen? We went to the preliminary hearing. The reason why that is significant is this is kind of the way the system was designed to work. The sheriff was arrested on September 19th. On October 1st, he's already at preliminary hearing. We don't normally see that in cases. And we usually see cases that drag on for years before we get to a preliminary hearing sometimes. So this is how the system is supposed to work, very quickly, rapidly, and it doesn't seem like the sheriff has a whole lot to hide. I mean, it's on video, for goodness sakes, right? The only question is, why? And was he going to be justified? We know the judge was unarmed from what we can tell. So the only other thing that I could possibly think of, based upon the facts that we know now, but of course that could change if we learn more, is there must be some sort of heat of passion type defense, right? The heat of passion type defense existed, and just give the example that you learned in law school, was that you come home, you find your wife in bed with her lover, and you shoot either the wife or the lover, and you say, yeah, I did it, but it was a heat of passion. It was a highly emotional situation, and you kind of lost it for a second. That's the only thing I could possibly think of would be the judge's defense. Now, also remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you get outside of the urban cities and you go into rural areas, normally the most powerful person in the county is the sheriff. Remember, sheriffs are elected by the citizens in these counties. Everybody knows the sheriff. The sheriff knows everybody. They know when people are having birthdays. They know if they have problems. They know everybody, particularly in smaller communities. So it'll be interesting to see if the case is moved and who requests that it be moved. It may be the prosecutors asking for a change of venue in this particular situation. Oh, I love this stuff. This is good stuff. Now, in cross-examination, the attorneys for Sheriff Stines, I guess they retired Sheriff Stines or resigned Sheriff Stines. But anyway, on cross-examination, the defense attorneys asked the detective, says that Stine uses his telephone to make some phone calls. He then borrows the judge's phone and seems to make a call on that. And that's what led to what you saw. That's what he was asked in court. Yes, the duo had been at lunch early in the day with several other friends, one of whom reported that Mullins asked Stines, do we need to meet in private in my chambers? Like I said, under cross-examination, the detective was asked whether he had any evidence to suggest the shooting was premeditated, and the detective said no, he did not. When the detective was asked if there was any evidence so far that would demonstrate that the shooting was not a reaction to what was on that phone, the detective responded no. Again, the detective confirmed in court that the police have interviewed Stines' daughter, and the interview took place in the presence of her mother. Now, 3 cell phones in total are currently being downloaded to the forensic lab and will be a part of the investigation once that is complete. Now, police allege that Stines walked into the judge's office, told court employees he needed to speak to Mullins alone, then proceeded to shoot him once they entered into the office. Mr. Stines has been charged with 1 count of first-degree murder. And like I said, the thing that's interesting is these men have been friends for nearly 20 years. Now, the good sheriff here could be charged with the death penalty if he's convicted of murder, because it was the death of a public official, Mr. Mullins being the judge. I'm telling you, this is going to be a good one, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a good one. And, we'll have to wait and see. And not that I'm saying you should go around killing people, but this may be one that you may have a little sympathy for the sheriff. Let me know. Let me know down below. Do you think the sheriff's totally guilty, or do you think there's something much deeper here going on? Remember, no one's raising any competency issues as it relates to the sheriff. So he meant to do what he did. The question is, was he justified? And then will the people of his county say it was justified as well? We'll have to wait and see. All right, next, Botham Jean's killer is eligible for parole. And guess what? Botham Jean's family are not happy with that. So we have an update in the case of the female Dallas police officer, former Dallas police officer, I should say, who killed an unarmed black man eating ice cream in his apartment. And the victims' families are furious. So Amber Geiger was still in uniform when she returned to her apartment complex on September 6th of 2018 and mistook Botham Jean's apartment for her own, which was on the floor directly below his. We covered this case. I'm not sure how she could have made that mistake, but apparently the apartments are all the same. She gets off the elevator, not paying attention, goes into the apartment, sees Mr. Jean sitting there, shoots him. Anyway, Ms. Geiger testified at her trial that the following year that she had found the door ajar and shot and killed Mr. Jean after mistaking him for an intruder. Now, Ms. Geiger was found guilty of murder in 2019 and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. But on Sunday, or what would have been Jean's 33rd birthday, the family of the deceased, Mr. Jean, found out that Ms. Geiger qualified for parole after serving just 5 years in prison, according to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. That is not uncommon, ladies and gentlemen. That's why there needs to be kind of truth in sentencing. The reason why these sentences are so big is that the state doesn't want to keep them for lengthy periods of time, and the motivation for early release is good behavior, and you have to behave to get paroled. And usually you're eligible about 50% on a non-crime of violence type of an offense. Just something for you to consider. Anyway, the family is expected to make contact with the Texas Parole Board in the coming days and let them know their feelings about whether Geiger should go free. As you may recall, Botham Jean's death sparked some massive protests across Texas as the residents remained outraged that the accountant had just been eating a bowl of ice cream on his couch when he was fatally shot. Now, Ms. Geiger was fired from the Dallas Police Department in the aftermath, and at her week-long trial back in September of 2019, she testified that she was scared to death and that she encountered Jean in what she believed to be her own apartment. After she was found guilty, Jean's brother, Brant, stunned the courtroom by embracing his brother's killer at an emotional sentencing hearing and telling her Jean would have wanted her to turn her life over to Christ. He said if she asked God for forgiveness, she would get it. Well, and also another weird twist, the judge that oversaw the case, a woman by the name of Tammy Kemp, also hugged the defendant and gave the ex-cop her Bible to take to prison. Anyway, Kemp later said in an interview that she could not refuse Geiger a hug and argued that her compassion was appropriate because the trial was over by then. I think poor move on the part of the judge. You shouldn't get involved in anything like that. It kind of just shows some partiality one way or other. But anyway, Ms. Geiger has repeatedly tried to appeal her conviction, which is her right to do. The appeal hinged on the claim that her mistake that Jean's apartment for her own was reasonable and therefore was reasonable to shoot him. Anyway, her lawyers asked the appellate courts to acquit her of murder and substitute a conviction for criminally negligent homicide, which carries a much lesser sentence. But the prosecutors countered that the error was not reasonable because Ms. Geiger acknowledged intending to kill Jean and that the murder is a result-oriented offense. Anyway, the court's Chief Justice, a guy by the name of Robert Burns, and Justice Lena Myers and Robin Patricia Kipnis concurred with the prosecution, disagreeing that Geiger's belief that deadly force was needed and was reasonable. In the 23-page opinion, the justices also disagreed that evidence supporting a conviction of criminally negligent homicide rather than murder, and they pointed to Geiger's own testimony where she said she intended to kill Mr. Botham Jean. That she was mistaken as to Jean's status as a resident in his own apartment or a burglar in hers does not change her mental state from intentional or knowing to criminally negligent, the court wrote. So they declined to rely on Geiger's misperception of the circumstances leading to her mistaken beliefs as a basis to reform the jury's verdict in light of the direct evidence of her own intent to kill. Anyway, Geiger then asked the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, the state's highest forum for criminal cases, to review the court's ruling, but that court declined to hear the case. So like I said, Geiger will now appear before the Texas Parole Board to plead her case for early release. Now, before people can be paroled, normally you have to accept responsibility, admit what you did was wrong, and that you are rehabilitated. We'll see if she can do that. And usually when there's public outroar, I doubt she'll get released this time. Maybe next time she's eligible in another year or so. Next, Eric Adams, that's right, the mayor of New York, he's getting superseded. So the prosecutor stated in court today at the mayor's first court appearance since his arrest that said, quote, "We think that is quite likely that they plan to file what's known as a superseding indictment in the case. The prosecutor said it's likely additional defendants will be charged and that it's possible that the new indictment would include more charges against the mayor. This development came soon after the mayor gave a thumbs up as he was heckled at the Lower Manhattan courthouse for the hearing before U.S. District Court Judge Dale Ho. H.O. Anyway, the hearing marks the first time Adams appeared in court since pleading not guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, and bribery charges and his arraignment on Friday. As we told you the other day, Mayor Adams is the first sitting New York City mayor to be criminally indicted and is accused of taking improper gifts from Turkish officials and business people, including $123,000 in free or heavily discounted hotels and flights dating back to his time as a borough president. Basically city councilman. The issue was he didn't disclose these types of issues or gifts, so to speak. For example, he had the free upgrade to business class. That was valued about $12,000 in 2017. Didn't disclose it. Trips to France, Turkey, and China. Free business class tickets for the 3 round-trip tickets from New York to France, Turkey, and China. Heavily discounted stay at a lovely suite at the St. Regis Hotel in Istanbul, valued $41,000. How about 2017? Free business class tickets for 2 round-trip tickets to New York to China, $16,000. Disclosed? No. How about 2018? Free upgrade to business class for 2 round-trip tickets from New York to Hungary, $12,000. Disclosed? No. How about 2019? Free upgrade to business class for 1 flight from New York to Turkey. Free stay at the Cosmopolitan Suite of St. Regis, Istanbul. Free meals, transportation, and entertainment in Istanbul. Roughly $9,000. And then in 2021, Turkey solicited and accepted, but then canceled, free upgrade to business class for 2 round-trip tickets from New York to Turkey, free or steeply discounted luxury hotels and resort stays, transportation, entertainment, and meals, another $21,000. How about a trip to Ghana? That's right. New York to Ghana, $12,000, including a layover in Istanbul. And, don't forget, he fraudulently obtained $10 million in public campaign funds. And federal prosecutors allege all that in their 5-count indictment. But it sounds like he's going to get superseded, so he's going to have more charges, ladies and gentlemen. All the more reason why government officials should be flying coach. They shouldn't get upgrades unless they can prove they paid for it themselves. But since they're just poor pauper public servants, they should be happy back in coach, ladies and gentlemen. So I can't wait to see if more people are indicted. Everyone went along with it. Everyone was complicit, right, ladies and gentlemen? They knew the mayor was going to get upgraded. They knew he was going to get upgraded. Oh, and he helped with that whole fire code thing as well at the Turkish embassy there in New York as well, the consulate. Well, anyway, he's going to say, I was just doing my job, and these are just routine perks that come my way. It's no different if Scott Reich buys an Economy Plus, and because of his status as a frequent flyer, because CrimeTalk 1 has been down, they upgrade me. That's what he's going to say. So the prosecution is going to have to show, no, that wouldn't have happened but for this special treatment. It's going to be interesting. Next, a TikTok influencer has been arrested as a possible suspect in a murder. So law enforcement has arrested a TikTok personality wanted in the case of the slain Baton Rouge mental health therapist, Dr. Nick Abraham. Now, according to the Baton Rouge Police Department, the Dallas police officers arrested Terrian Ishmael Thomas of New Welton, Louisiana in Texas on October 1st. Now, he will have to go before a judge in Texas for an extradition hearing. And during that hearing, the judge will determine if he should be returned to Louisiana to face charges for the warrant from the Baton Rouge Police Department. Now, the arrest warrant for Thomas lists only charges related to aggravated criminal damage to property, resisting an officer, and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, not murder yet. Anyway, police said that Thomas is a popular TikTok personality known as Mr. Prada. Now, the warrant, like I said, didn't include charges related to Abraham's death, and all of the charges were related to Thomas allegedly crashing the doctor's stolen vehicle in Baton Rouge on Monday afternoon as police tried to stop him along Sherwood Forest Boulevard. Police said the person inside the vehicle got out and ran away and was not apprehended. However, the warrant states that an officer later picked Thomas out from the photo lineup, therefore establishing probable cause for his arrest. Now, the deceased, Dr. Abraham, was apparently violently attacked, and his body was wrapped in a tarp and dumped alongside a highway in the Tanapahua Parish. We spelled it phonetically, ladies and gentlemen. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, his body was discovered Sunday morning. Investigators believe that Abraham was killed on Saturday, but they don't know where the homicide occurred. And the investigators said that a search of the apartment of the man in Baton Rouge didn't show any signs of a crime being committed there. So on Monday evening, investigators released photographs of a person of interest in the case, saying that the male in the photo was the last person known to have been driving Mr. Abraham's car. The photos came from surveillance cameras inside a store near the doctor's house. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. TikTokers, they can get in trouble too. Guess they should have stuck with YouTube and Twitch and Rumble and Twitter. You know, all the troublemakers over on TikTok, I guess. Anyway, a doctor's scheduled to plead guilty today regarding the death of Matthew Perry. So Dr. Mark Chavez, one of two doctors implicated in the investigation surrounding Matthew Perry's death, is set to plead guilty in a federal courthouse today. Now, the San Diego doctor faces charges of conspiring to distribute ketamine, a drug tied to the actor's fatal overdose last year. Now, Chavez previously signed a plea deal with prosecutions back in August, and they have offered lesser charges to Dr. Chavez and two others in exchange for their cooperation in pursuing the main targets of the investigation. Now, a Dr. Salvador Palencias and Hassan Sanga, an alleged drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen of Los Angeles, are the primary targets. Now, Chavez is currently free on bond and surrendered his passport and his medical license. And his attorneys have said that, hey, the good doctor is incredibly remorseful and is trying to do everything in his power to right the wrong that has happened here. Now, Mr. Perry's assistants and another acquaintance have also cooperated with federal authorities. The assistants admitted to helping Perry obtain and inject ketamine, while his acquaintance acknowledged acting as a middleman. Now, both are now aiding the prosecution against Palencia and Sanga, and the latter is accused of selling Perry the lethal dose of ketamine. Palencia allegedly sold Perry ketamine just a month before his death, and both Palencia and Sanga have entered a pleas of not guilty and are actually currently set for trial. Now, Chavez admitted in his plea deal that they procured ketamine from his former clinic and wholesale distributor using a fraudulent prescription, and he faces up to 10 years in prison at sentencing. Now, obviously, Perry was best known for his role as Chandler Bing in the series Friends, and he was found deceased on October 28, 2023, and the medical examiner determined that ketamine to be the primary cause of death. Perry had been using drugs as a legal off-label treatment for depression, a practice that has apparently become more popular, and Perry began seeking more ketamine than his regular doctor would provide, eventually connecting with Palencias, the drug dealer. Anyway, there's actually text messages out there between Palencias and Dr. Chavez saying, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." The two doctors met in Costa Mesa in exchange for 4 vials of ketamine, with Palencias later selling the drug to Mr. Perry for $4,500. Palencias then asked Chavez if he could continue supplying the drug, hoping to become Perry's go-to drug dealer. Now, Perry had a long history of addiction, and he struggled with substance abuse for much of his career. We had to do it. The dead guy deserved killing. At least that's what a Missouri teen is alleging. So on September 28th at approximately 11:20 p.m., the Bates County Sheriff's Office in Missouri received a 911 call from a male subject who stated that he had just shot his dad, who had adopted him, and fled the scene on foot. Initially, the subject was not able to give his location to the dispatch officer, and the male subject was able to give the dispatcher the location of the shooting incident. Officers responded to the scene. They were there within 2 minutes, and during the time, dispatch was able to ascertain the location of the male shooter. The shooter was taken into custody about a block away from the shooting scene. First responders and the Bates County EMS personnel were called to the scene. Prior to their arrival, though, the victim, identified as 41-year-old John McMurphy, was pronounced dead. The shooter was identified as Carter Joshua Curtis, and Curtis and McMurphy both lived in the same residence. Curtis has been charged with first-degree homicide and armed criminal action by the Bates County prosecutor. Now, Curtis is being held at the jail with a no-bond hold, and the sheriff said, "We still have a lot of investigation to continue, but we can assure you that the community there is no additional danger related to this incident," and that they offer their condolences to the friends and family of the affected victim. Like I said, Mr. Curtis has been charged with first-degree murder. We'll have to follow those cases. Certainly makes me speculate, since I had a similar case like that, but I will withhold judgment and my speculation until we know more. And next on the docket, this day in legal history. On October 2nd, 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as the first American Supreme Court justice. Now, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in, like I said, as the first United States Supreme Court justice, being of African-American descent. Before joining the court, Mr. Marshall was known for working as a lawyer in the civil rights cases. Mr. Marshall was known for working as a lawyer on civil rights cases, including his victory in Brown v. Board of Education back in 1954, which ended racial segregation in public schools, and his tenure on the Supreme Court was marked by a strong defense of individual rights and opposition to the death penalty. Also on this day, October 2nd, 1987, the United States Senate votes to reject the nomination of Robert Bork to the United States Supreme Court. It's referred to as Borking. That's right. The Senate voted 58-42 to block the nomination, and Bork's nomination by President Ronald Reagan was one of the most contentious in U.S. history. The confirmation process introduced a new level of public scrutiny to judicial nominations, and then the term Borking became a part of the political lexicon, referring to fierce opposition to judicial nominees. I think it was only worse when Clarence Thomas was nominated to the Supreme Court. It all started with the Bork nomination. And finally, our dumb criminal of the day proves that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So a man was arrested after attacking deputies who had contacted him to pick up his child who was detained for trespassing at a local Walmart. So here's the story. This past Saturday, the Flagler County Sheriff's Office responded to multiple reports of a group of juveniles causing disturbances inside a Walmart. The juveniles, who are all under 16, were apparently riding bikes through the store, yelling, cursing at customers, and setting off car alarms. Seems like a nice bunch of kids, doesn't it? Anyway, the deputies recognized several of the teens and contacted their parents. One of the parents was a guy by the name of Jonah Harrington that lives in Palm Coast, Florida. When he arrived, he immediately confronted law enforcement. Harrington ran up to a deputy and shoved him, and when two other deputies tried to detain him, Harrington struck one officer on the hand and resisting the efforts of the third deputy to secure him in handcuffs. Completely ignoring commands to cooperate, Harrington attempted to flee, but was quickly apprehended after a brief struggle, according to the sheriff, who said, "We all know the apple doesn't fall far from the tree here. We asked parents to pick up their children because they were causing trouble, but this parent chose to attack our deputies instead." So now Mr. Harrington, instead of just picking up his kid and then disciplining his kid and saying, "If you ever behave that way in public again, you're going to want the sheriff to be there because I am going to inflict great bodily harm against you." But no, Mr. Harrington chose to do the complete opposite, and Mr. Harrington was arrested and charged with 3 counts of battery on law enforcement officers and aggravated assault and resisting arrest with violence. And he's been taken to the Sheriff Perry Hall inmate detention facility where he is going to be released on a bond. Ladies and gentlemen, raise your kids right. My parents always told me anyone had permission when I was growing up to discipline me if I was misbehaving. Well, we don't do that today. Now we attack police officers who are trying to give your kid a break for acting like an idiot in a Walmart. Unbelievable. Sir, Mr. Harrington, you are the dumb criminal of the day. That's all we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time in Crime Talk. And yes, the Constitution matters.